Hi guys, so apologies for the delay in getting this post up. Events conspired against me, it seems. Please let me know if you have any information. The left-right game, Draft 1, the 13th of the 2nd, 2017. I'm followed back from the junction by an overture of birdsong. I'm grateful for the company. In the wake of Clyde's departure, I'm welcoming any sound that distracts me from my solitary footsteps, grasping for any conceivable antidote to the palpable silence that he's left behind. I am not, however, as welcoming of what the shrill, melodic warbling represents, the first symptom of impending daybreak. I'd only been up at this hour a few times before, stumbling back from Nidri Street and down Sweet Market after an unexpectedly heavy night out. My housemates, Molly, Craig and Tom, would spend the walk joyously discussing the evening's scandals, leaning against one another as we stumbled away from a night of horrific excess. This time around, the circumstances couldn't be more different. I'm quite alone as I make my way up the road, and the only excess in my night has been a relentless torrent of stress and melancholy. There is one similarity, however, resting in the back of my mind as much now as it did then. The nagging feeling that the day ahead will be one of bitter and immediate consequences. As somber as this night has been, I still find myself clinging to it, reluctant to witness the harrowing developments that sunrise will bring. In a few hours' time, the convoy will wake up to find that they suffered yet another loss. It won't be the brutal, heart-wrenching feeling that they experienced with Eve or Apollo or Bonnie, who perished in front of our eyes, but a muted sensation of gross unfairness, less immediate, yet all the more insidious. As much as we hate to face the horrors in our lives, it can be far worse when they strike us without our knowing. To find out that only the next morning that you've been affected by cruel forces, acting in complete disregard of your presence and taking without concern for you. It's not going to be a pleasant morning. Nevertheless, I'm glad to see the convoy when it finally comes into view. The hulking wrangler rests by the roadside like an old relic. Right now, I can think of nothing more comforting than climbing into its secure, rugged shell. For a moment, I find it strange how an object built for transit has become the one fixed point in my world. Then again, it's not exactly the strangest thing that's happened on this road. Blue Jay's car is parked sideways on, laid out across the tarmac. The windows are shrouded in darkness. Yet, for the briefest moment, I think that I see a red dot of a smouldering cigarette, igniting behind the glass, glowing momentarily before dropping out of sight. I fix my eyes on the Wrangler and keep walking, resolved to ignore the ominous flicker of embers, and attempting to ignore its uncomfortable implications. Even still, I shudder to think of the grim conclusions that are being drawn within that acrid, smoke-filled echo chamber. I rest my hand on the Jeep's passenger side door, pausing briefly to gauge the sun's progress. I probably have less than 2 hours before I'll be expected to step over that nascent horizon, to let Rob carry me into an unknown territory, onto the unexplored section of the left-right game. Whatever lies at the end of this ordeal could very well be 2 roads over. Then again, it could take a whole lot longer. But I suppose that there's only one way to find out. I climb quietly into the car and gently position myself next to Lilith. It's cramped, and now that she's had the space to move around, it takes a modicum of contortion to properly lie down. But it still feels more comfortable than the prospect of resting on the open space that had been reserved for Clyde. For tonight at least, it would feel like a little too much like resting on a fresh grave. The morning does come quicker than I'd like. Surprisingly, once I awake from a blissfully dreamless sleep, I realize I'm not tired at all. Perhaps it's going to hit me later in the day, or perhaps the need for sleep is yet another casualty of the road's odd sustaining quality. It's unsettling to think that the road is exerting some metamorphic influence over me, however convenient the effect. After losing most of my need to eat and drink, and now starting to require less rest, I can't help but feel that something wants us to continue on the road. Remove everything else that might distract us from the journey. It's a notion that intrigues and kind of terrifies me in an almost equal measure. When I open my eyes, I find myself staring directly at Lilith, who has turned to face me in the night. I can tell she's already awake, quietly resting her eyes, understandably reluctant to face the morning without someone at her side. Hey. Hey. Good morning. How'd you sleep? Yeah, not too bad. This place isn't so comfortable, though. Yeah, you get used to it. A moment of silence passes between us. I'm already aware of the empty space on the other side of the Jeep, hidden just beyond a pile of luggage and jerry cans. It would be easy for me to act surprised at Clyde's absence, to say that I had slept through the night, to throw myself into a fruitless search effort and to realize the truth alongside everyone else. Part of me wants to avoid the weight of recent events, to step aside and let all blame fall against the road. Yet, even if I wanted to, I know it wouldn't be right. I'm not going to contribute a new set of secrets to this journey. Anyway, for all I know, Blue Jay saw me return from the junction. I wouldn't want to give her the satisfaction of catching me in a lie. If I am going to tell them what's happened, then the conversation will need to happen immediately. Certainly before they have a chance to discover Clyde's absence themselves. The words, they don't come easily. They're impossible to form into a delicate order, and I quickly realize that any attempt is just delaying the inevitable. In the end, all I can bring myself to say is, Clyde's gone, Lilith. It takes a few seconds of quiet comprehension before Lilith sits bolt upright, alarmed, peering over the luggage to Clyde's side of the Jeep. Rob? Lilith. What's going on? Something took Clyde. Rob is suddenly awake as he twists around to view the back section of the Wrangler. I can see the realization dawn on his face as he understands what's happened. He turns back around and fumbles with the ignition. His eyes in the rear view are burning with desperate intention. He still thinks that he can catch up with Clyde before he crosses the threshold. Nothing's taken him, Lilith. Hold on. Rob, he's gone. We don't know that. We just gotta... Rob, he's gone. He already passed the junction. Rob's eyes flick to the rearview mirror, meeting mine. The engine stays running as he turns around to face me. How do you know that? The urgency has drained from the car, replaced instead by a palpable air of inquiry. Lilith and Rob are both looking at me intently, and for the first time on the road, I feel like a figure of legitimate suspicion. I was with him when he crossed over. What the fuck? When was this? It was last night, about 3 or 4 a.m. He said that he... In response to my words, Rob swings the driver's side door open and leaves the Wrangler. I watch him march out into the center of the road, his entire body tensed and strained by a swell of anger. I quickly climb out behind him. Fuck. Damn it, Bristol. Why in the hell did you let him? You weren't there, Rob. We're fucking yards away, Bristol. You didn't think to wake us up? Of course I did.
He told me not to. Oh, okay. Well, that's just fine then, isn't it? He'd made the decision, Lilith. None of us were going to stop him. Well, I certainly wouldn't have just let him fucking kill himself. You tie Bonnie to the fucking headrest, but you let Clyde waltz over the road without even telling us? That's a false equivalency. A false... Are you serious? Yes, of course it is. Bonnie wasn't herself. Clyde was capable of making an informed decision. His sister had just died. Of course he wanted to join her. That doesn't mean you just let him fucking die. You might as well have helped him blow his fucking brains out. Lilith.
Rob speaks the name harshly, forcing its owner into an immediate silence. After letting the group breathe for a moment, he speaks calmly.
Bristol, are you sure that there was nothing that we could have done?
I look Rob in the eye. His words hit me harder than Lilith's impassioned tirade. Standing before the both of them at the intersection of their expectant stares, I feel first inkling of doubt creep into my mind. What would have happened if we'd talked Clyde back into the Wrangler? If Rob had forced him to stay? Could he have found some reason to move forwards if we had kept him for a night? A day? A week? All I can do is hold on to my recollection of the night before, reminding myself of the sense of calm finality that radiated from Clyde when I confronted him. All I can do is trust that I made the right call.
No, there wasn't. Okay, well, there ain't nothing more to say.
Rob walks to the back of the Wrangler, cutting the conversation short through the quiet resumption of his usual morning routine. Then Lilith storms back to the car and shuts herself inside. I'm left standing in the center of the road, wondering if I could feel any more wretched.
I know what you did.
Well, at least that answers my question. It seems that while I had been struggling to defend the validity of my actions to Rob and Lilith, Blue Jay had very quietly climbed out of her car, waiting patiently for the rest of the convoy to scatter before directing a victorious smile towards me.
Can we not do this, Blue Jay?
She responds to my words by ignoring them completely.
I was up in the night, watching you all. What a surprise when I saw you leave with Clyde and come back alone, calm as a fucking grave. I don't know if Clyde was in on your little game, but he sure as fuck wasn't happy with how far you'd taken it. He had to go, didn't he?
I don't want to dignify her words with a response. In point of fact, I'm not entirely sure what I'd say to such an absurd accusation. Her statement rings with all the trademarks of a paranoid conspiracy. The unnatural confidence, the vague language, the frenetic conclusions which are so obvious to her, yet seem impossible for me to grasp. In the end, Blue Jay doesn't wait for my response.
I just want you to know that I am not falling for your fucking game. But you will not turn me around. And if you try anything like that with me, I will fucking kill you.
I stare at the woman before me, her pupils dark pools of venom, her smile curled into a crooked smirk of unadulterated contempt.
Why didn't you talk to the hitchhiker, Blue Jay?
Blue Jay's brow furrows, the smirk degrading from her face. I don't wait for her response.
I mean, now that we've seen what happens to people who spoke to him, it's fair to assume that you didn't. Or am I wrong?
Blue Jay presses her lips firmly together, glaring at me, the veins at her temples embossed against her taut skin.
It's alright, Blue Jay. I was scared too.
I walk to the back of the Wrangler where Rob has pulled out the stove and 4 camping chairs. After helping him set them up in the middle of the road and allowing him to cook me a bowl of steaming hot rice, I sit down next to him and eat what I can. We can't think of anything to talk about, and the 2 remaining chairs stay empty for the rest of the meal. When I climb back into the Wrangler, Lilith seems quiet. She's less angry now, and as I've seen before with her, is now being forced to confront the feelings her fury had been overshadowing. She shares a look with me in the rearview mirror, a look of being genuinely lost. I find myself reflecting the same expression as I stare back at her, and in that small silver of glass, I think we both find a glimmer of understanding. An understanding that there have been no easy choices on this road, and that we should forgive each other, and ourselves, for the decisions that we've had to make. After all, I wouldn't be surprised if there are harder choices ahead. It takes less than an hour before we reach the woods. The drive has been predictably bereft of conversation. However, as the cornfields merge into a deep green woodland, and the thin opening we're supposed to take draws nearer, Rob breaks the silence with a customary all calls address.
Ferryman to all cars. I just want to say that it's an honor taking this next corner with you all. From here on out, we move slow. Report anything unusual and stay on the lookout for the next turn, okay? Alright, here we go.
Rob twists the steering wheel and we turn in a slow, deliberate arc towards the gap in the forest. The tarmac disappears below us, giving way to a rough dirt track. A towering legion of knotted trees eclipse the convoy, the sun all but disappearing behind their thick canopy. The significance of this small turn in the road isn't lost on me. We had finally crossed the threshold into the unknown reaches of the left-right game. For all we knew, we were the first people to ever have come this far, the first explorers of an entirely uncharted world. I'm not surprised when I realize that I've been holding my breath. I examine my compatriots closely. Lilith isn't even looking at the window, lost in her own tumultuous thoughts. Rob is reacting exactly as I expected, looking out of every window with an air of mystified wonder.
Well, I'll be. It's beautiful, ain't it?
As I look away from him and back out the windshield, I find myself smiling. Even after the stressful morning we've all had and the uncertain day that lies ahead, Rob's statement rings with a joyous sincerity which I can't help but appreciate. I also can't help but agree with him, in its own eerie way, that it's a beautiful place. The Wrangler moves at a crawl for the rest of the day. The woods are vast and untamable. The thin, swooping branches hang lazily over the road, clattering against the light rig as we pass beneath them. Many of the trees stand at strange, crooked angles, their various disparate inclines making it impossible to see too far in either direction. Rob spends every moment scanning the sides of the road. The trees that flank us are so thick, so tightly packed together that it's easy to denote an upcoming turn. I suspect Rob simply doesn't want to take any chances, paranoid as he is about the road's deceptive qualities. He needn't have worried, though. There are only 4 turns across the entire afternoon. Each one is identified far in advance and navigated perfectly. Before I know it, we've entered the early evening, with no discernible end to the woods in sight. We've been travelling uphill for a short while, plateauing into a thin stretch of road, an endless expanse of forest to our left, and a dangerously steep bank to our right. With one less side of the road to look out for, Rob seems a little more comfortable holding a conversation.
So, what are you going to do if you actually get to the end of the road? Document it, bring it home, and hand it over to the world. And after that, well, I guess I might take a vacation. Maybe I should visit London. You want to show me around? You've never been to London? I just pass by, carrying packages. I never like cities so much. I try to stay out of them when I can. I'd go if I had a tour guide, though. Okay, well, that's my next story then. Rob Guthard takes on London. I don't think folk would want to listen to that. I don't know. I think people would tune in for that. Or are you just worried that you'll grow to like the place? Junior would never let me hear the end of that. Fair enough. Wait, sorry? My son. He wouldn't let me forget it. He's always been a city boy.
I stare out into the pitch-black forest, suddenly thinking back to my arrival in Phoenix, Arizona, just 5 days before. I recollect my formative meeting with Rob Guthard and how I'd been treated to the briefest overview of his life. I hadn't pushed for too much detail, wanting to hear the story in his own words and under the assumption that I could get more background after a short stint on the road. After 4 days of intrigue and horror and stress, I haven't had time to follow up. In all honesty, it's only now that I think back on it that I realize just how little ground we covered in our first interview, how eager he was to skip past the formative details of his existence. I didn't know the names of his ex-wives or anyone who wasn't directly involved in his work with the paranormal. For example, I didn't know that he referred to his son as Junior. Often used as a general nickname for a child, it can, every so often, mean something much more specific.
Does your son share your name?
Rob turns to me, confused.
Yeah, did I never... Look out!
Rob snaps forwards as a fleeting blue darts across the road before stumbling down the steep verge to our right. Over the engine, we can hear rustles and thuds as it disappears down the steep hillside and into the deep forest below.
What was that? Was that a deer? That's what it looked like. It went straight off the edge. Why would it do that? Ain't too bright is all. Guys, can we get moving? This is...
I'm interrupted by the sound of faint rumbling emanating from the woods on the left side of the road.
What is that? We ain't waiting around to find out.
Rob kicks the car into gear and pulls down the track. Less than 5 seconds later, he slams the brake on once more, stalling the car as a small group of 3 or 4 deer burst out in front of us. A few more can be heard skittering behind the Wrangler, slamming against the back of the Jeep as they hurriedly negotiate the gap between us and Blue Jay. As Rob works to restart the car, I stare out the window and into the forest, finally aware of what I'm hearing in the trees. It's the thunderous sound of hooves hammering against the earth, brushing past the undergrowth, struggling over rocks and branches on their way towards us. In no time at all, the forest erupts from empty darkness into chaotic, violent life as an unbroken herd of frenzied deer burst out from the trees. Rob tries to tell us to hold on, but he doesn't have time. The path ahead floods with hundreds of stampeding deer, an unbroken torrent that blocks out the headlight beams. Lilith jumps back from the passenger door as deep, thudding knells vibrate through the Wrangler. The deer, locked in desperate sprint with little space to maneuver, are running head first into the side of the car. One of the smaller deer bolts out of the forest and hits the deep green metal just below my window, the reverberation shaking the glass. I think I hear its neck snap. The ones that get past the car aren't faring any better. Locked in a frantic state and forced along by their equally desperate cohorts, I can only watch as they spill over the edge of the steep hillside. Countless bodies crash into the darkness, carried down into what I can only assume is a quickly developing mass grave of twisted, interlocking bodies.
Rob, get us out of here! We ain't moving through this. Just stay down. What the fuck is... Somebody help!
Blue Jay sounds terrified. The Wrangler is taking a beating from the onslaught of desperate creatures, but is still managing to hold firm. When I look back towards Blue Jay, I see a different story entirely. The car is lying at an angle, pushed towards the edge of the hill by the sheer force of the herd's collective impact. The passenger side is on display, riddled with slick red marks and heavy craterous dents. The creatures rush past her, clumsily clambering over the hood and hammering into the doors of the car. Blue Jay screams into the receiver, placing a hand over her eyes as one of her front tires passes over the edge, the car's chassis dropping down into the dirt. Luckily for her, when I turn back to the forest, I can see it's emptied dramatically. The flood has subsided, and the last few deer are pelting through the trees and across the road, and their position at the back of the herd providing them with more than enough space to maneuver around the convoy.
Ferryman to Blue Jay, get yourself over here now. We gotta go. What the fuck was that? What the fuck? It was just a herd of deer, Blue Jay. But they were running pretty hard, and I ain't looking to meet whatever they're running from. We don't have time to get you back on the road. Get over here now.
Nothing more can be heard from Blue Jay's radio, except for static and a few intermittent gasps of breathless fear.
Oh, fuck. Stay in the car, you two. Lilith, hand me the rifle. I ain't taking any chances out here.
Lilith finds the rifle and hands it over to Rob. Grabbing some supplementary ammo from the glove compartment, Rob climbs out and slams the door, marching through the dirt to Blue Jay's ruined car. I clamber into the back of the Wrangler, struggling over a pile of empty jerry cans and surveying the scene as it unfolds. In an almost Herculean effort, Rob wrenches the passenger side door open and holds his hand out for Blue Jay to take. I look on as she unbuckles her seatbelt, climbs out unassisted, and immediately launches herself at Rob, crying her eyes out and lashing at his chest with two clenched fists. She looks distraught, terrified, and violently angry. Rob stands there and takes it, whispering vague assurance to her as she unloads her terror and frustration into every wailing blow.
Come on, Blue Jay. We gotta go.
Lilith talks under her breath, willing Blue Jay's catharsis to speed itself along. I look at her, silently sharing her impatience. But then, something catches my eye. Something in the distance behind Lilith, slowly making its way through the trees. I turn around and scramble to the front of the car, returning with the radio transceiver.
Rob, get back here. There's something in the forest.
Hearing my warning crackle out from Blue Jay's car, Rob turns in my direction, before alarmedly staring into the forest where a pale figure is winding its way towards the pair. From what I can ascertain as it briefly leaves the obscuring undergrowth, it seems to be small, tremendously thin, and crawling unevenly on its hands and feet. The creature stops in a clearing ahead of Rob and Blue Jay, in view of me and Lilith, but shrouded from everyone in the shadow of the forest. Blue Jay separates from Rob, pulling a head torch out of her bag. Slowly, and with trembling fingers, she points the beam towards the creature and switches it on. The resulting sight is incomprehensible. The beam instantly illuminates the light frame of a thin, almost emaciated child. It's barely over a year old, deathly pale, covered in dirt, its skin stretched taut over frail limbs. It stares up at Blue Jay, reflexively holding one arm over its eyes to shield itself from the bright LED light.
Holy shit. What's happening to it?
I know exactly what Lilith's talking about. My hand raises to my mouth as I watch the child struggle through the stream of harsh white light. With every step it takes, the child's form starts to shift and change. Its limbs elongate in jagged, lurching bursts of growth. Anything exposed to the beam develops with grotesque rapidity. It's as if the child is aging before our eyes. Letting out a tortured scream, the creature departs towards Blue Jay, angrily swatting the torch from her grip. Blue Jay screams in shock and pain as she holds a stricken hand, her attention transfixed on the child, who has seemingly aged almost 3 years in a matter of seconds. Even in the fresh darkness, with a head torch fractured on the ground, I can tell that Blue Jay is paralyzed with an abject consuming horror. Rob doesn't hesitate though. He reflexively grabs Blue Jay and pulls her backwards into the path of the headlights. The creature reaches out from them as they go, one hand passing after them in the light. It pulls back quickly though, its eyes full of heart-wrenching juvenile tears. The fingers of its left hand age beyond the rest of its body. Its cries begin anew, and as ghastly as it seems, the child doesn't seem malevolent or demonic in any way. In fact, as it looks back towards Blue Jay, it seems genuinely upset,
unable to comprehend the actions of those around him. As it stares sorrowfully back at its newly malformed fingers, it's not much of a stretch to assume that the transformations are as painful to endure as they are disturbing.
Stay in the light, Blue Jay. Keep moving.
Blue Jay breaks away from behind Rob and sprints towards the Wrangler. As soon as she begins to flee, the child lets out a high-pitched scream and strikes the hood of Blue Jay's car. The impact of the blow is impossibly forceful. In less than an instant, the chassis crumbles in a mass of jagged metal. The one remaining headlight disappears from view as the car is launched off the path and rolls into the valley below. With Rob and Blue Jay now returned into the darkness, the child skitters quickly towards Blue Jay, grabbing her foot as it lifts her off the ground and yanks it backwards. With all her momentum immediately halted and one foot taken out from underneath her, Blue Jay has nowhere to go but down. She slams into the earth, her chin bouncing off a sharp rock. Blue Jay looks up at us with stunned, pleading eyes. Lilith and I have only a few seconds to meet her gaze before she's dragged backwards along the road. She screams in pain, her ankle caught in the child's iron grip. It doesn't even break pace as it walks back towards the woods, pulling Blue Jay along like a rag doll. Rob reaches out for her, snatching for Blue Jay's hand as she writhes and thrashes against the unstoppable force. They connect briefly, but Rob's effort to keep a hold of her is futile, dashed immediately as she's pulled effortlessly from his hands. Blue Jay resorts to clawing at the ground, dragging thick dark soil and pulling loose rocks free from the dirt. Rob somberly unstraps his rifle, swinging it from his front. He reaches into the breast pocket of his jacket and chambers a single bullet. Blue Jay looks on as Rob raises the rifle to his shoulder and aims for the back of the oblivious child's head. Lilith turns away from the window, cowering away from the insanity outside the car. I can barely watch myself as Rob places his finger on the trigger, but the shot never comes. Blue Jay shrieks as the child reaches the tree line, pulling her into the undergrowth. Rob's hands are shaking, unable to do what needs to be done. Cursing loudly at the air itself, Rob lets the rifle fall to the ground. He stands immobile as Blue Jay's screams continue to emanate through the trees. His expression has been worn by everyone on the road, and like all of them, he's no longer present, lost to a realm of hopelessness and bewilderment. But unlike many others, he doesn't stay that way for long. Unlike the rest of us, Rob Guthard manages to bring himself back.
Bristol, there's a torch in the green bag. Get it, now.
I don't have time to hesitate. I scour the contents of the Wrangler desperately, Blue Jay's screams growing increasingly distant with every passing second. Locating a large green bag in the far corner, I crawl across the Wrangler, unfasten the straps and spill its contents into the car. A heavy-duty LED torch clangs against the cabin floor and I snatch it up before it can roll away. Returning to Rob, I swing the back doors open and jump out onto the dirt track, throwing the torch toward Rob's outstretched hand. As soon as he catches it, Rob sprints into the forest, leaving me and Lilith behind. The events that unfold among the trees are told to us in sound and light. After almost a minute of silence, the torch's rays burst through the trees. Blue Jay's distant screeching intensifies as the child breaks into a gut-wrenching cry. A large crash echoes through the night air, the sound of a bark cracking as the very trees shatter in splinters. The light dances chaotically as Rob lets out a cathartic, damaged roar. Suddenly, the child's desolate wailing growls more distant, retreating deep, deep into the woods. And then, suddenly, silence.
Oh, Bristol, what's happening? I don't know. Stay in the car.
We wait for what seems like an age, lost in worry, before the gentle rustling of undergrowth calls our attention back to the tree line. A moment later, Rob emerges from the trees, holding Blue Jay's arm around his shoulder.
Thank God. Thank God.
Lilith says. The pair stumble over to us, slowly and painfully. The Blue Jay walks with a limp. Her ankle is already horribly bruised. Rob sports a series of cuts across his face, but seems otherwise unharmed. He calls back to us, utterly exhausted.
Nothing to it.
An irrepressible smile grows across my face, a pained grimace of sincere joy. I raise a hand to my mouth as tears of unbridled relief start to roll down my cheeks. It's a brief, fleeting moment in an otherwise dark night, but for once, we've managed to pass through the storm, battered and broken, but at the very least, still together. Blue Jay falls to the floor, slipping free of Rob's grip and unable to hold her own weight. Rob turns around to look for where she's fallen and finds her crawling slowly towards the steep verge.
Blue Jay? Denise, are you okay?
Blue Jay stops crawling, places her hands on the ground and rises unsteadily. I suppose that she can stand on her own after all. When she's finally upright, she turns back to Rob, raising his rifle to her shoulder and fixing it on his torso. My smile vanishes.
Denise? What are you... Put it down. It was a child, Rob. It was a child. What did you... Bristol? What's happening? Stay in the car, Lilith. Denise, you've seen it as much as me. You saw what it did. It tore at my... It broke my skin. How... Why are you doing this? Denise, you know what you saw, okay? You know this is real. We ain't doing this to you. It's happening. To all of us. It's...
Rob stares at Blue Jay, then down to the rifle, the sights boring into his chest.
Okay. How about we turn the car around, right now? I'll turn us around and I'll take you back home and I'll drop you off outside the tunnel, safe and sound. I just want to get you home safe. What do you say?
Blue Jay looks into Rob's eyes. The rifle quivers in her hands. We all wait, scarcely taking a breath, for Blue Jay's response.
I don't believe you.
The shot echoes around us, and Rob falls to his knees. A look of surprise and disbelief carved into his face. There's a plume of dark red blossoming around his shoulder. There's no air in my lungs. My entire body is paralyzed by the shock, by the rank unfairness, the sheer impossibility of the scene before me. I still don't understand how it could possibly be happening.
Holy shit! No! Please, Blue Jay!
Blue Jay quickly paces up to Rob, snatches a handful of ammunition from his breast pocket, and reloads the rifle with practiced efficiency. She stops shaking. In fact, there's a calm conviction to her movements which convinces me, with shocking immediacy, that I might be about to die. I dive back into the Wrangler, slamming the door shut behind me. I find Lilith gripped by an immediate, immobilizing shell shock.
We need to go. Lilith, we need to go, okay? I don't understand. Get out of the car, both of you. I'll kill him. I will kill him. Do you think she's going to kill us too? No. She was going to shoot Rob in the chest, but she aimed away at the last minute. She's just bargaining. Bargaining? She wants us out of the car. I think she's going to take the Wrangler. If she leaves us here, we'll die anyway. I know. Well, we can't fight her. One of us will... Get the fuck out of the car, both of you. I want your hands where I can see them. It's okay. Here, take this.
I reach down and grab the walkie-talkie, pressing it into Lilith's hands.
It's a short sprint to the tree line. We need to get around the hood of the car. Then we can get into the woods as soon as there's an opening, okay? I can't do this, Bristol. I'm sorry, Lilith, but You're going to have to.
I gently open the driver's side door, climbing out and edging along the muddy verge, keeping low to avoid Blue Jay's line of sight. Lilith climbs out after me, closing the door softly behind us. Without making a sound, conscious of every rustling leaf that passes underfoot, I gesture for us to make our way around to the Wrangler's hood. Lilith goes first, staying below the windows, working her way to the front of the car and passing around the corner. From the hood of the Wrangler, we'll be able to make a beeline to the trees.
Don't play fucking games with me.
Before I can make my way around to join Lilith, Blue Jay's impatience boils over. I can hear her footsteps on the rough ground as she makes her way over to the Wrangler. The situation rapidly spiraling further from my control. There's only one thing I can do to stop her discovering the both of us.
Okay. We're coming out.
I raise my hands and stand up, making my way to the back of the Wrangler. The Blue Jay stops walking before she gets far enough to notice Lilith. She turns to face me, raising the rifle to her shoulder. A moment later, I hear Lilith burst out from her hiding place, sprinting into the trees. Blue Jay quickly realizes what's happened and, with a yell of violent frustration, turns the rifle to face the tree line. Lilith has already disappeared into the forest, out of range and out of sight. I choose not to attempt to rush Blue Jay in the midst of this distraction, and I'm right not to. Realizing that Lilith is lost to her, Blue Jay quickly spins back towards me and levels the rifle at my chest.
I knew you were all in on this together, you fucking monsters.
Her eyes are practically bulging from her sockets, her entire face contorted in malicious, sickeningly righteous hatred. After all these days on the road, I have never seen something quite like this.
You're not well, Blue Jay. No. I'm just not willing to fall for your fucking tricks. How could this all be a trick, Blue Jay? How? Apollo, Eve, Bonnie? You saw what happened to them. It's beyond our understanding, mine and yours. There's no such thing as a fucking magic trick. Only fools are fucking frauds.
And there it was. In one sentence, the trigger of Blue Jay's creeping insanity. The inflexible belief that had broken her mind against a maelstrom of contradiction. With every impossible event that she had witnessed, every brutal death that had unfolded in front of her, Blue Jay's unwavering skepticism had barred her from blaming the supernatural, from blaming the road. Instead, she had blamed us, a swiftly dwindling pool of conspirators whose crimes had swiftly spiraled from deception to reckless endangerment to outright murder. As far as Blue Jay was concerned, we were the only monsters on this road. This wasn't madness. It was self-defense.
It doesn't matter anymore. You can go home, okay? But just at least take Lilith with you. Please, she isn't a part of this. I'm not a fucking retard, Alice. Don't you think I've been watching? You're all complicit. And as far as I'm concerned, you can all fucking walk. I'm sorry, but I just don't think I can let you do this.
She laughs, a sarcastic, ugly chuckle, holding the rifle tight against her shoulder.
I can't see how that's your decision. Well, that's always been your issue, hasn't it, Denise? You lack imagination.
I step backwards, allowing gravity to carry me over the threshold of the steep, dark slope. In the last few seconds before I topple into the darkness, I clench the fingers of my left hand. When I'd been holding both my hands up, my empty palms faced vertically towards her, Blue Jay could have easily mistaken the band around my finger for jewelry. As I fall backwards, Blue Jay's eyes fixed on my now closed fist, as she sees what's attached to the other side of a ring. A bottle opener, a small LED torch, and the ignition key to the Wrangler. I disappear over the edge, bracing myself for what's to come. With nothing else to do, I surrender myself to the long fall, followed into the darkness by the enraged screams of Blue Jay.